Mute and start the meeting and wait until I tell you to go.
Now, Kim, these are these videotaped or just?
They're videotaped.
Oh, they are? Oh.
I don't know.
So above, do your hair.
We're good.
This brings the start of the meeting of the Oregon City Transportation Advisory Committee interview process for replacing 2 vacant positions on the board. And our first applicant is here, and each one of us is going to be asking some questions, the same questions to all the applicants. And so the first one, state your name and we shall be off and running.
All right, my name is Ben Simmons.
Okay, if you'd be so kind, sir.
So Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in being on the Transportation Advisory Committee.
All right. My main interest is stemming out of the fact that I've been a small business owner in Oregon City. I've lived here my whole life, basically in the Karis area and now in the north end of town. And I've had a lot of good people and interactions with the people of Oregon City, and feel that, you know, as a successful business owner, it's kind of the least I can do is start with giving back to the community and doing something for those people as opposed to the other way around for a change. So I do own an insurance agency about a stone's throw down the block here. I've been an independent insurance broker for 20 years. I have 11 agents and employees working for me at 3 different locations now across the Portland metro area. Grew up in Oregon City, but never went to Oregon City schools. In Karis, I was always at Canby School District. And then later in life, we moved to Wilsonville, but we were Charbonneau, so I was still Canby School District. So having lived in Oregon City the vast majority of my life, I haven't gone to schools here. So attended Canby High School, Willamette University, done the insurance thing for about 20 years. So that's in a nutshell.
Okay, have you visited the TAC website at all?
I have visited the website. I have watched a few of the videos online just to kind of get an idea of what the board was, or the committee was about.
And you're still applying, amazing.
Yeah, you know, surprisingly so.
And are you familiar with the stated purpose of the committee?
In general, but maybe not specific to the letter of the charter, perhaps. But I do understand that advising the city council on transportation measures and things of that nature. With my background in the insurance industry, you know, I've got a lot of things as far as safety is concerned, and as far as actuarial data that's flown around, as far as accidents and death rates and things of that nature that I can definitely dive into. But I do know that there's a lot of things I would need to learn along the way. But in my job that I have currently, my main position is problem solver. So taking ideas that may not be firsthand to me and going out and doing the research and finding out the information to make an educated decision, something that I do pretty much every day and every minute of every day.
So describe any previous committee experience you may have.
Pretty well none. I've, you know, been advisory to lots of people across the business community, but not in a formal role or setting such as this before. This would be my introductory into that, but definitely looking forward to it.
Good. So we meet once a month, generally speaking from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Does your current workload or schedule allow for this commitment?
Yeah, being that my office is about 100 yards down the road, it's a very easy commute for me. Again, I do live obviously in Oregon City, and getting here would not be a problem. And once a month is by no means a large commitment, so no problem there.
So occasionally the TAC will be asked to invest time outside of the regular monthly committee meetings. And does your current workload or schedule allow for this kind of commitment?
Being that I am the sole owner of the company, it does give me a lot of responsibility, but it does give me flexibility over my schedule, so yes.
Good. Are there any specific transportation issues that you're most concerned or passionate about? If so, please share what those are and why it's important to you.
The things that interest me the most is I know that we're a city that's growing, and we're definitely taking on expansion and neighborhoods and businesses, and with that comes traffic problems. So, you know, I guess I'm excited to delve into the problems and the situations of what happens when the city expands, and the process of getting those things done ahead of the expansion to hopefully provide a more comfortable transition in the growth process. So I know that several of the communities, mine in particular, I live off of Holcomb. We got several new developments going in there, and I know there's talk about some bigger ones even coming down the road. So definitely, I know there's some growing pains probably coming down the road, and would definitely like to be an active part of helping that process through.
Okay. Have you been involved in any sort of policy development before?
Within corporation, yes, but not as far as city government. I take that back a little bit. I was, you and I spoke beforehand, I was in Multnomah County Search and Rescue, 18 to 20 years old, in that ballpark. I was also in Civil Air Patrol as a pilot. And so that is something that those type of procedures and things happen in those environments. So I have been accustomed to it, but not in a formal setting like this.
Okay. Describe your knowledge about the various modes of transportation and which ones do you use and why?
Well, planes, trains, and automobiles, for the most part. But yeah, I have used the train station here. I do drive a ton, probably 40,000 miles a year I probably personally put on the road. And as a pilot, I do use the air as well. So I know that mass transit is something that's on the periphery of our community, so it's not something I use on a regular basis, but I have used TriMet services and MAX and things of that nature, so I'm pretty well familiar with those firsthand.
Okay. Can you describe in your own words the relationship between land use and transportation?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna transition land into different uses, you've gotta get people there. So if you wanna make some commercial buildings available and we're gonna build commercial structures, you gotta get the customers there. So, just like I mentioned also with the expansion of the residential, you're gonna put, 1,000 more houses into a community or more. You gotta make the arteries and veins of the system work and get people where they need to be without serious congestion. So I think it's pretty self-evident on that.
And lastly, is there anything else you would like to share to help us make our decision?
I just kind of like to circle back to the fact that, I like to be a problem solver. I mean, that's something I take pride in, and doing research and educating myself on the subjects, finding good outcomes, and I'm not somebody that gives up. I'm somebody that's gonna put in the time and effort to get a job done, make sure it gets done well and properly.
Very good, thank you.
All right?
Do you have any questions of us?
The one thing that came up was the specific charter, so I know in a nutshell, I have an idea of what it is, but is there anything outside of what would be obvious as to the charter of the committee that is expected, or the jobs that you guys do?
About the only thing that you might have missed is that we are sort of the eyes and ears of Public Works for the community sometimes.
Okay,
So if we hear something or you see something or whatever you think John ought to know,
you guys facilitate that process?
yeah.
Okay, good deal.
When you referred to the charter, were you referring to the bylaws?
Yeah, I mean, I would call it a charter, but if that's the terminology, it's the specific bylaws for the TAC of specifically what you guys are supposed to accomplish, yeah. Anybody else?
Well, thank you much.
All right, appreciate your time, thank you.
I'm sure,
Painless, wasn't it?
Fairly painless.
I'm sure Kim will be in touch.
All right, take care, you guys.
Now, if we don't have our next candidate, we,
They're here.
oh, okay.
No, the gentleman that walked in is Keith Cummins.
Oh.
He's the 5:30 time slot.
Okay.
We,
If we're ready, let's bring him in.
yeah, we could go ahead.
Mike Cummings?
Well, it was, yeah, it's the same guy.
Keith Michael Cummings.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay then.
Would you like me to bring him in?
If he's here, we might as well take him and use our
Is there,
time.
He is.
In the questionnaire, it's listed as Mike Cummings. On the other thing, it's listed as Keith.
Yeah. It's,
Michael Keith,
it's,
same person.
When he
I wasn't
introduced
sure which
himself,
one.
He introduced himself as Keith Cummings.
Okay.
it's number 3.
Number 3, right, he's here.
Like
he's here.
Uh-huh.
You guys are ready?
Yeah.
We can go ahead and see Mr. Cummings.
Yeah, he calls himself Keith.
Next person should be David Stanek.
So which was next?
Is there somebody coming up?
Mike Cummings.
Okay, so we're skipping the second one.
I think the door.
Until he shows.
And that
Okay,
lock.
got it.
Get the hot seat right up there by the microphone. Microphone, okay. If you don't mind, I'll open my notes here a little bit. Good evening.
Well, welcome, and please be seated. And we'll be asking questions of you. And first item that we'd like you to do is state your name so we know we're talking to the right guy.
Okay, would you like me to stand or be seated?
Don't be seated.
Okay, okay.
Just be sure to talk into the mic so that our televised audience can hear you.
Okay, I'll do that. My name is Keith Michael Cummings.
Okay? And I'll be asking the questions for you. And they're the same questions that we'll ask everybody, and pretty much all of us have been asked that in the past, so. The first one is, tell us about yourself.
Well, I am recently retired. My wife and I have moved back. I guess I should start out. I'm a native Oregonian, recently retired. I've lived out on the East Coast for the past 30 years, my wife and I. We moved back a couple of years ago, and we chose Oregon City to retire. So.
Have you,
And I'm a retired business professional.
Oh, okay.
So,
have you visited the TAC website?
yes, I have. And taken a look at the bylaws and your goals and the various information that was on the site.
Are you familiar with the stated purpose of our committee?
Yes, I'm relatively familiar. I read through it.
Have you had any committee experience working on committees anywhere?
No committees like this. I have been involved in neighborhood associations. I was an advisor for a neighborhood association back on the East Coast where I lived previously, so for a number of years.
I think that would qualify. This advisory committee meets once a month from 6 p.m. to approximately 8 p.m. Does your current workload or schedule allow for this commitment?
That would work fine for me. Again, I'm retired, so I'm available pretty much anytime.
Occasionally, the TAC will be asked to invest time outside of the regular monthly meetings. Does your current workload and schedule allow for this?
Definitely.
Is there a specific transportation issue that you're most concerned or passionate about? If yes, please share the issue and why it's important to you.
I think, I'm not sure here, but I think I would, just to give you a little more background about myself, in the 40 years of my business experience, I've lived in 4 different major metropolitan areas around the country, Portland being one of them, Los Angeles being another, Houston, and then New York City finally, before we moved here. And so I've had to commute and use various transit systems and things like that. I'm familiar with traffic pressure. I think that all communities and stuff like that are concerned with public safety, number one. Traffic flow, I think, is very important, and ease of access, I think, is an issue for all communities. And what I've experienced in other places that I've lived, I've found that to be, and I would imagine that they experience the same kind of things here. And I think I could lend some experience or at least some opinions to that.
Have you been involved in policy development before?
I haven't.
You have?
I have not,
Oh, have not. Okay, thank you.
but I'm interested in public policy.
Aren't we all? Describe your knowledge about the various modes of transportation and which ones do you use and why?
I'm only back here 2 years, and so I'm not really as familiar with the public transportation system around here. My wife and I use our own vehicles right now. I have a recreational vehicle too, But since I'm retired and she works from home, we don't use any public transportation or anything like that. But we're definitely on the highways and streets all the time.
Can you describe the relationship between land use and transportation? Could you restate that question again, please? Can you describe how land use and transportation are related to each other?
I believe they're related to each other because one coincides with the other, or at least appropriate management of one or the other coincides.
Is there anything else you'd like to share to help us with this decision?
If you don't mind, I'll look at my notes here real quick. It went away, of course. A couple of other things, you may have already seen this because I filled out an application or something, but I'm already involved in some community activities here. I'm doing volunteer work at the Pioneer Center, and I'm also doing volunteer work up at Willamette Falls Hospital. So, and let me take a look here. One other final thing, I read a little while back that the city is about, and I know that we already have one traffic circle in this town, is that correct? Is there only one? Two. There are two.
If you
And
call
are
it
there
a
others
traffic circle.
slated? Is that correct? Are there others that are in the plan?
But we have discussed them in the past. What does kind of drive all construction is the ability to pay for it.
Understand.
But they will probably be more if you're talking about the next 50 years.
Okay. The only reason I'm asking is because I have a pretty intimate relationship with that, in that they have many of them on the East Coast. And there are very positive things about traffic circles, and there are some negative things about them. Overall, at least my experience in the past, is that it definitely improves the traffic flow, but one has to be it tends to increase the number of small traffic accidents. But there are ways to improve that, and that is to make signage very clear, or at least on the East Coast, they call it over signage. They sign up until right until you're into the intersection. And then also, they make those areas so there are absolutely no obstructions anywhere, so you can see very clearly. And they never plant them out, so 10 years later they've grown out and create obstructions and stuff like that. But it was interesting to me to come back to Oregon, and when I left 30 years ago, there were no traffic circles, and then to come back and find them here after living on the East Coast.
So, do you have any other questions for us?
Not that I can think of, no.
Anybody have any follow-ups?
Well, if we followed our transportation system plan, we'd be known as Roundabout City USA. So that's pretty expensive.
Perhaps I missed it on your application, but what was your profession?
Formerly, I was a pharmaceutical trade magazine publisher, and then that was for about 11 years. And then after that, I was an electronics components broker, and then finally I was a music publisher.
Oh.
So I retired a music publisher.
Okay.
They're all related. They're all so related.
Well, the magazine and music publishing was, and even commodities brokering. It's about relationships and things like that, so it served me well. And it's about deadlines too, and so that also helped me.
Well, I thank you for your interest, and I'm sure Kim will be in touch with you as to further developments.
Okay. When could I expect an idea or an answer back from you?
Yeah, so, did you get it? You probably didn't get an answer for that, right? No. So, typically what happens is we make the commission or the committee makes a decision tonight, a recommendation. And that's forwarded with the city recorder. I'm not sure what the mayor's schedule, but the mayor makes the appointments, so I think we'll try and get that done in the next week. And so I think a week to 2 weeks is probably when you'll hear, and then you'll actually be, you'll make the announcement at a commission meeting, which you don't necessarily have to be there for, but, let's see, we've got, our next meeting is tomorrow night, so it's not gonna happen then, so it probably wouldn't be until like April 3rd, I think, is the next meeting.
Okay. And who would be in contact with me, Kim?
It will typically it's been the city recorder.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
so,
met her, so,
okay, yeah, Katie Riggs.
yeah, yes.
Yes.
All right, thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We gotta put Jason on the committee.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
He's here on time.
you're volunteered.
Ask some questions they're gonna ask you.
So our 5:15 has not showed.
Okay.
Do we have anybody else waiting out there?
Not that I'm aware of, I'll go double check.
Okay.
And 5:15 is David, is that correct?
I'm sorry, what?
David is the 5:15 one?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
No show?
going on this picture?
Can I
call somebody and look at that?
No.
Okay.
It's just
And did we
a
get
couple
a,
signs down.
how many positions have we filled?
He could be just a little late.
Two.
on
That's what I thought.
One picture.
Oh,
I don't know why there was so many more applicants this time than last time. It didn't sound like-
the whole thing.
Shaking the bushes.
Are we more popular as time goes by?
I stood out on a street corner and paid them $5 a piece.
The homeless guys?
Nobody here.
14th
In
and John
that,
Adams, there's
in that
there's
case,
actually two signs.
shall we take a recess until such time as they show up?
Okay.
I thought I sent.
Well, we can take a few minutes just to read the material that you put together with the application.
Well, I'm sure we could, but I don't know if that'd be of any interest to the televising public.
Well, we can just be, whatever, you can adjourn while we do that or whatever.
9:27 in the morning.
Okay, David,
Okay, yeah, we've taken care of that, we heard about it.
Oh, okay,
Is that the one that the officer reported in?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, good.
So what, do you want me to pause it for,
and I think that would be,
I move we have a temporary, a momentary adjournment.
yeah.
okay.
Or
Ryan Thread. You, sir, are Ryan Thread.
We
Okay,
need to get everything up and running.
yep,
Yeah.
bring him in and I'll start us up.
Yeah.
Does he know?
The next can we start? Okay, the next applicant has arrived and we will resume the interviews process now. Welcome to
Thank
to our board here, and first off, I'd like to have you state your name so that we know we're talking to the right guy. And two, this gentleman to my right will be asking you all the questions that everybody else has been asked, and so.
I'm the only one that can read.
My name's Ryan Thread.
Okay, Ryan. So just tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well, I guess it's just kind of, I guess want to be more specific towards what this job entailed, I guess. And I did have a chance to kind of look over what the purpose of this was, as being an advisory role for the Transportation Committee. I don't know if, did you receive a resume on what I've kind of done in my past? So with that, I do work a lot with different municipalities, including engineers, architects, and then general contractors across the Pacific Northwest. So I do get to see a lot of the interactions on different sorts of projects that are going on. Anything from currently working on the Seattle Waterfront project to the South Waterfront down in Portland currently, to even kind of smaller roles that have been done even in my past of working for the old, what was it, Glacier Northwest, I guess back in the day where the Cove is now, was the old Ready Mix plant down there. And I actually had experience working as sales with on the Abernathy Creek Bridge. So a lot of different sorts of projects that I've been a part of. And I thought that that may be a good segue into an advisory role like this.
So and you have visited the TAC website?
Yes, briefly.
Are you familiar with the stated purpose of the committee?
Well, as it was stated, the 2-paragraph notes here, yes.
Describe any committee experience that you've had.
Currently been working for the last 2 years on the Oregon City School Board Budget Committee. And that really is the only other role that I've had in the public sector. Frankly, that was my first experience working into a public sector style opportunity, so.
So the advisory committee meets once a month from 6 to approximately 8 p.m. on our Tuesdays. Does your current workload allow you to schedule or allow for this kind of commitment?
It doesn't.
And occasionally, the TAC is asked to invest time outside of the regular monthly meetings. Does your current workload and schedule allow you for this kind of commitment?
What would that entail, I guess? Can you be more specific on that?
Perhaps a subcommittee, 2 or 3 people that need that meet together at their convenience, okay, to work out, develop some plan or some issue.
Sure.
Have you ever been involved, is there a special transportation issue that you're most concerned or passionate about? If yes, what's the issue and why is it important to you?
That's a good question. I guess just with myself having a younger family, I'm always interested in knowing what other, or the development plans that are going on in the area. I've noticed the Park Place plan, the Beaver Creek plan, as well as the, I don't know if, is it called the Redland master plan as well?
There's the South End Master Plan. Park Place is the one you're probably thinking of. It's
Yeah,
on the Redland side.
So a lot of those, obviously I'm with my current job as well, I'm always in the forefront of new projects going on. So that would probably be what I would enjoy more, I guess to say. I found out that I do live on a speed humps road that I did not know. I did not know the terminology until I got to the website there, but not a real big deal either way to me, but.
Have you been involved in public, have you been involved in policy development before?
No. I guess policy development as a city or county level, no.
Policy development?
Well, I mean, I work a lot with architects and engineers specifying projects and getting that certain design into the project per se. So for instance, the Seattle waterfront had a big retaining wall that they had some soft soil conditions in the area, and we came up with a solution, talking to the geotechnical engineer, specifying soils behind it that were gonna mitigate that issue. I don't know if that's necessarily, I'm not the end guy on it, but I'm the advisory guy, I guess, right?
Describe your knowledge about various modes of transportations and which one do you use and why?
Different modes of transportation? Are you referring to like walking, biking, public? I can say some biking, some walking, not a lot of public for myself. And I do work at home, so my commute's not too bad, but my wife could say otherwise on her commute, but.
Okay. Can you describe the relationship between land use and transportation?
It seems like a broad question. I'm not sure if I could.
How are they related? Or are they related?
I mean, I guess, obviously there's land that is, are you talking future land use compared to what is going to be built?
Yeah, go that way.
Well, my idea of it is that to use the land the best possible way it can be used. I've got an instance that a job in Seattle where they put a full, they put a light rail through a peat bog. Well, that's definitely not the best use of the land when you're having to deal with so many different soil conditions in that area.
Anything else you'd like to share with us to help us with this decision?
Let me see. I wasn't too sure if I was going to be asked questions or if I was going to present today, so. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to emphasize back on some of the unique planning that has been done in other communities that kind of stood out to me. For instance, the roundabout that was done in Oregon City, or is that the proper term for it down on? Yeah. Okay. That was I've seen that done in a Deer Park area up in the Spokane region. That was even done on a highway that I thought was a unique way to use the roundabouts. I've also been impressed by other cities, including Wilsonville, where they actually use concrete streets a lot more, especially under paved, or especially at their on-ramps, understanding the longevity of the material is going to last a lot longer. So in long term, it's going to be something you're not going to have to maintain as much. So that's just kind of stuff that I see being in the realm.
Do you have any questions to ask of us?
Well, what is the well, when I look at the purpose on here and I see it's an advisory form of role, I'm on the budget committee currently for the school board. We chime in if we need to on certain topics, but that's really all we do. Is that the similar type of position here, or is it definitely kind of getting into the more nitty gritty?
Well, we are probably best described as being sort of like staff's eyes and ears, if you will, out into the community so that we have an open forum where people can come in and talk about their concerns. And then if we see something, we can bring it to the attention of staff. And so in terms of that, we're advisory. We look at some of the master plans and make comments and such. But in terms of decision-making, that is strictly staff and city commission.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I think of the TAC as a sounding board, people from the community that have diverse interests that might, we talked pretty recently about 20-mile-per-hour zones in Oregon City, and they provided some feedback on that. They sometimes make motions that help support programs like that. Usually we give them updates on capital projects and, any feedback that they have about whether we're missing the mark on, like public involvement, are we getting the word out well enough? They do that. And we have a little bit of a trouble with the land use piece, just the timing and trying to make that work. But this committee has been very interested in land use and trying to, guide that. So we kind of do that maybe, at a higher level, or, instead of right at the land use approval phase, it's more like through some of the plans. Like if we had a concept plan, tonight we're going to hear about, we're going to have a speaker that's going to be here to talk about the Beaver Creek rezoning and implementation plan. So I don't know, we try and throw a few things as staff, but yeah, I think it is advisory, and sometimes our timing is off. We may need a decision at the, that the city commission's going to make, and we really didn't, do that in a timely manner so that they've made the decision first. So that's a problem sometimes, but.
Any questions of anybody here?
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Kim will, I'm sure, will be in touch with you as to further developments.
Okay, well, thank you.
And thank you.
See if everybody's out there.
Yeah. If you have a card, I'm curious about that Cell Creek.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead and give it to Nance if you got one. We're doing a little Cellcrete on, or we're talking about doing it. Cellcrete's usually a lightweight, isn't that what it is? Lightweight concrete, air and train kind of thing. So one of our landslide areas, we've actually asked one of our consultants to look at lightweight material like that.
Where is the other roundabout in Oregon City? I can only think of one.
There's one down by that Clackamas Cove.
The old,
Oh,
the old
yeah.
concrete plant.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they put the two of them right next to each other almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, we've had that long discussion about Mount Pleasant.
Yeah, it'd really be nice to get that one moving. Kind of dealing with a couple other big projects first. It'd be nice to at least get some concept.
Just don't move down Myers Road, just keep it all up there.
I still don't get it, like when you.
Nobody out there.
Okay, another brief recess until our next interviewee shows up.
Question?
I'm the question guy, yeah.
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 Look out, Tammy, here I come.
Be nice.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I'll be
we're
a
recording again.
Bring us back in from recess.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
Afternoon.
We will resume the TAC meeting now, having been recessed, we're waiting the arrival of the next interviewee. And you're glad to see you here, and we'd ask you to start out by stating your name so we know for sure that we're talking to the right person.
My name is Tammy Johnson.
And one of the gentlemen over here on my right will be the one asking you questions. Everybody else has answered the same questions. We've all answered them for the last few years, so it's,
Hello, Tammy. My name is Bob LaSalle, and I'll be the interviewee for you. First off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I was born in Oregon, raised in Yakima, Washington, so Eastern Washington in the country. At my work, I was in jewelry since 1991, except for a short stint of about 5 years. I was doing jewelry and real estate in Washington, but my work moved me back down here to Oregon, where I managed up until last year. In June, I joined the state of Oregon. I work for PERS, and we do a lot of committees there. And so we bought a house 2 years ago here in Oregon City, and I thought it would be, if somebody wanted to have me on their committee, that it would be something I could do to kind of give back to our community. So I have a son, a 4-year-old son, and it's just kind of important to me that you know, I'm raising him right and doing good things basically to give back.
Okay, have you visited the website, the TAC website?
Yes. Even looked at some of your meetings and minutes so I could get an idea of what y'all are doing.
Oh, good. Are you familiar with the stated purpose of our committee?
Somewhat, yes, although I've never served on a committee like this before, so.
Can you describe any committee experience that you've had to us?
Sure, since joining the state, I'm on the all-staff work group committee where we plan operations division meetings that we hold quarterly, and in April is our one offsite a year. I'm also on I just finished up the food drive committee for the governor's, food drive. I'm on the diversity committee and on the PERS community committee. So because I'm the admin for the ACOO of PERS, it kind of keeps me busy with lots of projects and committees.
What's ACOO?
The ACOO is our basically third in command of PERS.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's Assistant Chief Operations Officer.
This TAC committee meets once a month from 6 to usually around 8 p.m. on Tuesdays once a month. Does your current workload and schedule allow for this committee?
It would.
Commitment?
I'm off at 4 every day. I'm not in retail anymore, so I have the luxury of shutting it off and walking away. And I do have a babysitter, and my boyfriend's parents live here as well to be able to help out with daycare.
Occasionally, the TAC will be asked to invest some time outside of the regular monthly committee meeting. Does your current workload and schedule allow for this kind of commitment?
Yeah, as far as I saw, there wouldn't be any, conflicts. I get Saturday and Sunday off regularly, and I'm off at 4, and depending on traffic, usually come back into the area about 5. I work in Tualatin.
Is there any specific transportation issue that you're most concerned or passionate about? And if yes, please share with us about the issue and why it's important to you.
I think I'm concerned or passionate about the commute. I go from 205 to I-5 daily, except for weekends, and there's always things in Oregon City, and Portland. There's potholes and all kinds of traffic concerns that with the way that we are getting more people that are moving into this lovely state. I mean, it's definitely something that we need to stay on top of. Do I have experience in traffic? No, just driving as a commuter, but I think it's important.
Have you been involved in policy development before?
Policy development, probably, as a manager for almost 18 and a half years in jewelry, I would follow the rules set by the company, but when it came down to it, they were always run it like it's your business. So it wasn't like the state is with the, workflows and process maps and all of that we do. So I would say probably no would be the right answer on that.
Describe your knowledge about the various modes of transportation and which ones do you use and why?
Various modes like the motorcycles and the cars and the airplanes and the trains and that type of, I use the cars and I use airplanes when I'm flying off to vacation somewhere. Don't do motorcycles anymore. I don't think they're very safe. Seen some people in accidents and would rather not. Haven't ridden a train, really, besides little ones that run in the mall with my son.
Can you describe the relationship between land use and transportation?
Well, I would hope that we would always be striving to preserve as much of our, earth as possible and working with it, not against it. But at the same time, it's so overpopulated our freeways on rush hour too, that we have to obviously expand while keeping all the, preservation in mind, but.
Anything else you'd like to share with us to help us make this decision?
I have a retail jewelry background. Like I said, I'm now in the state, so if you feel like you might use my services, you'd find me to be willing to do anything that I can to kind of help out, but I'm sure I don't have the, traffic and transportation knowledge besides just being a commuter, and living in the city. I'd love to, do something for Oregon City, but so if you need me, I'm available.
You'd like my wife, she's high maintenance.
Could probably talk jewelry to her for days too.
Do you have any questions of us as a committee?
I was reading a lot. I didn't really come prepared with like questions like interview style. I just thought it was going to be a little more casual like the last one that I went to here. So I didn't realize I'd be in front of the panel.
We're still casual.
I'm sure there's a bunch of questions that would come up, as I was getting into it. But at this point, I'm not really familiar with, the proper things that I should be asking at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tammy.
Of course. Thank you for your time. Is that
Thank you.
everything?
Does anybody have any questions?
One question.
Sure.
With the diversity committee that you mentioned, how do you see that experience shaping your viewpoint on this committee? With the diversity committee that you serve on?
We live in Oregon, so it's one of the, it's way more diverse than Yakima, where I came from, So I think just taking everybody's views and opinions maybe into consideration. I think it's nice that you guys are open to the public too when people come in and have questions or want to observe what you're doing here. And I think it makes an impact to what you guys are doing here, so.
Cool, thank you.
It's just everybody has an opinion and so.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you for having me today.
Before you leave, I should mention that Kim will probably be in touch with you with any further developments.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Have a
Tammy.
good day.
Thank you, same thing.
It is open on Clackamas County.
I know Tim West is here. Somebody else walked in.
I don't know, I just double checked my email to make sure I told, and I did, he was supposed to be here at 5:15, I don't know, if maybe thought it was.
I've been on design reviews now for like 8 years.
Luckily, we're running ahead of time.
hate design reviews.
Yeah, we could interview him last.
Most of the time, there's no reason for the review.
It's over.
Well, we actually
We schedule these interviews and
provide,
I don't have to do it.
Some guy down there.
well, actually, we had amend conditions of approval. That's not.
I know, was that my deal or?
They do
Are
it.
you ready for the next?
Yes, please.
So,
David?
David did show up. He had a slot at 5:15. I told him, we put him in at the end. So, because Tim was on time, he should be rewarded.
There you go.
So, are we ready for Tim?
Yes.
So number 2 is back on David's.
Yeah, he'll go last.
So Tim's
No,
up
I know,
next.
but David's.
David will be last.
Hi, how you doing, Phil?
That's okay. My brother Phil,
Your other brother.
yeah.
Welcome. And, first off, we'll ask you to say your name so we know we're talking to the right person.
All right, my name is Tim West.
Okay. And we'll be asking you a set of questions that we've asked everybody. And we'd like to have your responses. And one of the gentlemen over here on my right will be asking you the questions.
All right.
Hello. Tell us about yourself.
I am retired as of about 3 years ago. I used to be a capital equipment medical sales guy, traveled the state and the country selling medical equipment, CTs, x-rays, and MRs and that. And I own a property over in Madras that keeps me busy probably about a couple times a month to go over there and work on that. And I recently got involved in their Madras's Transportation Advisory Committee because they're looking at raising a gas tax. And instead of a gas tax, it's going to be a prepared food tax to improve the roads there. So it was really interesting the way they came about and did that. And I'm a avid cyclist, recreational cyclist. I use the roads on a bicycle, and I could feel every bump, and that needs to be done. And those roads that aren't bike friendly around here, it's something that would be something that I would be looking at and seeing if we could improve. But I live right over here within a 5-minute block or walk of this very place right here, so it's easy to make a meeting. So it's something that I've lived here for over 33 years in the same spot. So I know the area pretty good. I'm very familiar with Oregon City's roads and infrastructure, and I'd like to see what I could do to improve things.
Thank you. Have you visited the TAC website?
No, I haven't.
Are you familiar with the stated purpose of our committee?
Relatively, in the fact that looking at keeping the roads and infrastructure up to date and ready for economic development and attraction to new people to move to Oregon City, and just making the roadways and byways up to date for the general public.
Describe any committee experience.
Any community experience? I have, I'm on the Hillendale Pickleball Club Committee, and we're going after grants for improvements at the pickleball court over there, and sitting with a group to improve things over there, and things are looking pretty good. If you don't play pickleball yet,
That's a pickleball court and not a volleyball court?
It's a pickleball court, yes, uh-huh.
Oh, never seen anybody play pickleball.
You'd have a lot of fun to try it. But I have served, well, my wife was a city commissioner for the city of Oregon City, so I know the rigors and routines of sitting in regular meetings and doing homeworks and getting things done for preparation of the committee meeting and getting things done, so I could see that there would be progress every meeting.
This advisory committee meets once a month from 6 p.m. to approximately 8 p.m. Does your current workload and/or schedule allow for this commitment?
Yes, it does. Being retired, I have a pretty flexible schedule.
Occasionally, the TAC will be asked to invest time outside of the regular monthly committee meetings. Does your current workload and schedule allow for this kind of commitment?
Yes.
Is there a specific transportation issue that you are most concerned or passionate about? If yes, please share about the issue and why it's important to you.
Mostly, as I said, it was with the perspective of being a cyclist, a road cyclist, and there's lots of opportunities for improvements with not only a striped path for cyclists, but or even more signed routes for cyclists to ride on. So it is something that Oregon City is a great place for a cyclist to live in, because we're so close to the beautiful roads of outer rural Oregon City, and it could be a biker's heaven if more people knew about it. And that's the thing that surprises me the most, is that I've been riding forever, and I don't see a lot of riders out on the road, and it is because everybody tends to be way up in the northeast side of Portland instead of coming to our beautiful area down here. So to make it more available to cyclists, to spread the word with signage and cooperation with bike shops and that kind of stuff would be an asset for the city.
Thank you. Have you been involved in policy development before?
I used to be the president of a hang gliding club, and we had to make policies for certain hang gliding sites, and how to approach things, and who is allowed to go on them, and all that. So yes, I've been involved in setting policy, but other than that, it's more of my 10,000-foot view of managing an apartment, and utilizing my staff to get things going the way that we want them to go. So it's looking at things with a bigger picture and making things the way you want them to go.
Okay. Describe your knowledge about the various modes of transportation, and which ones do you use and why?
Well, mostly it's the car and bike, and my wife and I are avid walkers. So, and the transportation, I don't know if bike paths, walking paths are part of the transportation advisory, but there's plenty of opportunity for bike or for hiking paths also around here. And with the new development down here at the water, the falls, it makes for a great opportunity to bring walkers, hikers of all sorts. And besides walking, driving, biking, I think I drive a lot more than I do the others. So yes, that would be my favorite mode.
Thank you. Can you describe the relationship between land use and transportation?
My perspective of that would be, if indeed new roads were gonna be put in and, it's what is the better good for the city itself and how, we could go ahead and, work with landowners to get, the right, combination of, eminent domain and the continuing smooth infrastructure that is already here right now. So it's, that would be my perspective of that.
Okay. And last but not least, anything else you would like to share to help us with this decision?
I think that having a person like me that is more of the cycling and hiking and walking perspective on the committee will really lend a good opportunity to get into things that Oregon City could use, like better biking paths, better walking paths, connecting biking paths to other infrastructure that is around here, like down by the Cove, and making that go further than just the Cove. I think that that would be a huge opportunity right here. I know that with the Newell Canyon, with the canyon that's beyond Canida, I think that is also a huge opportunity for mountain biking paths and hiking paths that could be done. I volunteer occasionally with the Trail Keepers of Oregon, and we build trails out in McIver. And I know that they have their eyes set on the Newell Canyon, and Newell Canyon is something that would be a great asset for people to hike in there safely. I mean, there's a few residents there that might be upset that you're gonna go ahead and build a path there, but I think that it is a great and very hidden asset that isn't being utilized right now.
Thank you. And do you have any questions for us?
I understand that you can work on the Beaver Creek corridor over there. I think that's going to be a huge opportunity for economic development, something that Oregon City needs an industrial base like Canby. And if Canby has a little gold mine there, and this is a huge opportunity for Oregon City to develop. So it'd be really interesting to see that go. So no, I'm interested in being a part of the committee. I think it'd be fun to see the transportation infrastructure being formed from a committee level like this, and seeing what kind of changes I can make with a committee.
Does anyone have any questions?
We thank you, and I'm sure Kim will be the contact person for telling you about any further developments, and you know, so thank you again for your interest.
All right.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, see ya.
Thank you, Tim.
Yep. You got it.
Ready for our next one?
We only got one cyclist, that's all we
Was enough, huh?
We have enough motorists. It goes both ways.
Yeah, that's right.
Welcome. And we would ask you to say your name so we know we're talking to the right person.
Sure. My name is David Stanek. Let me just apologize to the group. I had a 5:15 slot and been in Denver watching my niece get married for the last weekend, and I had one of those MAX 8 flights back, which didn't make it. So last 48 hours has been kind of crazy getting here. So I apologize. I'm late.
One of the gentlemen on far right over here will be asking you a set of questions that everybody else has been asked.
Sure.
And so we've all answered them too. So at this point, John?
Welcome, David. I'm John Anderson, and
Hi, John.
our first question is, tell us about yourself.
I am a new resident to Oregon. I moved here in December. I'm a newlywed, and I have a 50-year-old father of 3 adult children. I've had a career in sales most of my life, and I'm a bicycle advocate. This past summer, I rode my bicycle across the country with my wife. And my experience in relation to this committee would be that I served on the Santa Clara Pedestrian Advisory, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And I'm just interested in contributing to my community.
Okay, thank you. Second question is, have you visited the Transportation Advisory Committee's website?
I have.
Any comments?
It seems very straightforward as far as what the TAC is there to do, which is to advise the City Commission, Planning Commission, and the Urban Renewal Agency.
I think you just answered. The next question is, are you familiar with the stated purpose of this committee?
Yes. Repeat.
Describe any committee experience you've had, public or private sector committee experience.
Besides the committee experience on the Santa Clara County Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, other committees that I've been a part of have been in more of a private sector. So I've worked for Chinese carbon fiber factory that required representation in the United States as far as import, export. And so there was multiple people on a board that kind of made sure that everything was on the up and up of what we were importing. Committee, let's see, other volunteer committees. I don't have that's it.
This advisory committee meets once a month from 6 p.m. to approximately 8 p.m. Does your current workload and or schedule allow you to make this commitment?
Thank you for asking. Tonight is a terrible example, but I can make a meeting on time.
Okay. Occasionally, the Transportation Advisory Committee will be asked to invest time outside of regular monthly committee meetings. Does your current workload and schedule allow you this kind of commitment?
It does, John, yes.
Is there a specific transportation issue that you are most concerned or passionate about? And if so, please share about your interest in the issues and why it's important to you.
I think what my passion is anything that will inspire people to move on their own. So pedestrians, bicycles, there's so many alternative vehicles now, I can't list them all, but paths and safety routes that get people where they're going. That's kind of not an elimination of vehicles, but in congruence with traffic and vehicles, cars. So I'm specifically passionate about bicycles, and the reason why is that I've been in the bicycle business and I am an avid rider.
Bicycle business?
Yeah. So I touched on it before. I worked for a Chinese carbon fiber factory, and we manufactured bicycles for various brands in the United States.
Okay, thank you. Have you been involved in policy development before?
I have, just to the point of advising. So on the Santa Clara, I'm sorry, have I been saying Santa Clara prior?
Yeah, I think so.
I was born in Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, that's why. The San Mateo County Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, we would help the 23 cities, we'd help divide those funds to the appropriate city based on very kind of rigid scoring standards. So if there was, say, $10 million to divide out to these 23 cities, we would judge the cities on how prepared they were for the project that they're applying for the funds for. We'd look at the funds and say, if there's 10 million, it's ridiculous for everybody to get, 1/23 of that. What projects are ready to go, possibly have matching funds, would be best for the community as a whole, as far as where were they close to public transportation, were they close to the high density housing, were they close to schools? And so it was our job to score these projects, these proposals accordingly, and then vote to, or advise the committee on what we thought the funds would best be used to do.
Thank you. Describe your knowledge about the various modes of transportation and which ones you do use and why.
Various modes of transportation, automobiles, scooters, motorcycles, bicycles, walking. I'm seeing more and more of these electric scooters in some cities, electric bicycles, bicycle share programs. Those are the ones that come to mind. The ones I use are automobiles. I have a Vespa scooter parked in the parking lot right now, bicycle, and I walk on the paths and sidewalks of the city. And the reason I use those things is to get to and from work, to recreate, and to kind of explore or just see downtown. So, good question.
Can you describe the relationship between land use and transportation?
Difference between land use and transportation. Well.
Can you describe the relationship between
the relationship, I'm sorry, the relationship, not the difference. Sure. Land can be earmarked or tagged so that it can be used, or not all of it, but partially used for transportation. So easements or public paths can be developed or on land use. Maybe a developer is required to put a path to a school or a high density housing project through their land if they're developing that land. I don't feel like that's great, but I don't have a lot of experience with that. So.
Anything else you would like to share with the committee to help us make this decision?
No, I guess that kind of goes back to how I can contribute. So I have a history of volunteerism in my family, and I moved up to Oregon so that I could be part of a community that I can help shape and develop. That's why I kind of left California, is that there's a lot of people there right now who don't seem to give a darn about how their community is developing, kind of there to make some money and get out. And so I'm searching for a place where I can kind of do some good and help develop the community I live in.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of us?
I am looking at your titles now, so I kind of was wondering who I was speaking to at first, but I see everybody here, so I just appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sorry again that I missed my slot, and I appreciate you staying longer to facilitate my interview. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
I assume Kim will be your point of contact.
She is, yeah.
And we'll be getting back to you with
Okay,
everything.
perfect. Thanks, guys. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.
Okay, Kim, what's the expectation?
So shall we-
Go over that again?
Shall we gather up our stuff and
Well, let's,
pass
I
it down?
don't know if Sedemere heard is the scoring clear, the highest number,
That's what we did the last time, yeah.
the highest?
So you rank your number one with
Six is best, one
Six
is
is
least.
best, one is least.
And I hope we can have multiple numbers of the same number, multiple instances of the same number.
No.
Okay,
No,
I
wait,
need to,
wait a
I need to
minute.
work
You
on mine a
said-
smidge.
So six is best and one is least?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wait.
Six is,
If I put number one down,
Goes at once.
that would be the number one choice.
No.
No, six would be my number one
It's
choice.
based on points, so whoever has the
Points,
highest
okay.
points.
Oh, wow.
oh,
Okay, threw me a curve.
Yeah, threw me a curve too.
Glad we went over that again.
okay.
High score wins, man.
Yeah.
This is like,
But you can rate several of them as a 2 or a 3 or a 5, right? You don't,
No.
you gotta go 1 through 6. 1 through 6.
And we abstain.
Okay. Aye.
do you really need to? Or do you just want to?
I feel like it.
Really?
Well, yeah,
Abstain?
yeah.
Do you know somebody? Are you related to somebody? Or?
No, our vote won't mean anything.
Oh, well, I don't know about that. It usually does mean something.
Not to some people.
Hold on. I think I just screwed it up again. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. That made it sound better.
Okay.
She's got on the agenda there.
Oh, yeah, we gotta take all the heat off it.
Yeah.
Folder all as well, right?
Yep.
You can't stop.
Or you have a hobby or something? Hey, that's part of public record.
We are still
So
live,
you gonna pick them up, or how do you wanna do that?
Good times.
Little pepperoni.
You come around to us, or you get it all right now. You know, it's that we're on diversity.
Yeah. Get it.
I'm gonna name all of them.
Thanks for coming and sitting through that. That light, does it always flash?
No.
It's flickering.
That thing's been flashing all evening.
I know, I don't really know if it.
Okay, Henry.
Okay.
It's our earthquake warning system.
Yeah.
Evacuate.
Are you, okay.
Move along.
This will start the regular meeting of the Oregon City Transportation Advisory Committee. Kim, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Atkinson?
Here.
Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. Lyman?
Here.
Mr. McEnroe?
Here.
Mr. Jessic?
Here.
Mr. Tong?
Here.
Is next on the order would be approval of the minutes. Does anybody have any questions, suggestions, changes, alterations?
Move approval.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve it. All say aye. Aye. Okay. Now then, agenda analysis. Anybody have anything they want to add, change, move, complain about? Hearing none. Citizens' comments. Not seeing any citizens, not having any citizens' comments. Excuse me, ma'am. We'll move on to the new business and discussion of the Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan. John, you want to do the honors?
Well, I don't think Christina needs much of an introduction, but she's a senior planner with the Community Development Department. She's been with the city longer than I have, so that's probably 18, 19 years.
17.
Oh, 17, okay, well, and she does just about, she's probably had every assignment there is to have up there at Community Development. And so this project is about the Beaver Creek Concept Plan and really kind of the implementation, which I understand is mostly about adoption of code. And not just code, but zoning. So it's one step, well, I won't even go into that, you'll probably go into that, but it's an important step to get further along with the future development of the Beaver Creek concept area. And yeah, just Christina's just a wealth of information, so I'm sure you're gonna enjoy her way better than me. So go ahead, jump in there.
Oh, and I do have hot off the presses our next meeting flyer. So I'll wait for this to warm up.
It's a good works this time.
Mine doesn't have that button.
There we go. So Chair McEnroth and the TAC, thank you for inviting me this evening. My name is Christina Robertson Gardner. I'm a senior planner with Oregon City. And my goal tonight is to give you a little background of the Beaver Creek Road concept plan, where we are today, and, where we are today and where we're moving forward as we move through the spring into adoption hearings later this summer. I hope to get you all involved if you haven't been involved to date. So first, I'm going to backtrack and explain why we even have a Beaver Creek Road concept plan, and that is really based on the urban growth boundary. So the urban growth boundary is region-wide. This Oregon City is a piece of it. We make recommendations, but Metro, at the end of the day, through consultation with all of the governments, determines if there is enough land for a 20-year land supply, and if not, they expand the urban growth boundary, and they have to look at it every 6 years. So in 2002, they did look at that. They did say in 2002, that they needed more land to have a 20-year land supply. And they brought in 3 areas in Oregon City in 2002. They brought in the Park Place concept plan area, the Beaver Creek Road concept plan area, and the South End Road concept plan area. And as part of that process, in 2002, you were required to do what we call concept plans. And those are really those 20,000 foot analysis. And I like plans kind of, I think is a bit of a misnomer. People think of the concept plan as a master plan, and it's not a master plan. It's that one step higher. It's a big picture analysis of how infrastructure can be brought to the site over time in full build out, and what the city needs to do to amend their master plans, be it water, sewer, transportation, storm, to be able to provide that growth. There is an urban design aspect and a density requirements, because the reason why we have an urban growth boundary is to make sure we have efficient use of land. So there are some density targets that we had to meet as part of the 2002 2002 urban growth boundary expansion that were brought into the Beaver Creek Road concept plan as part of the 2008 adoption. And so in 2008, after a 2-year public process, the City Commission adopted the Beaver Creek Road concept plan. And it went through some legal review and came back in 2016, and the City Commission re-adopted it. And we are here now looking at how do we amend the city's comprehensive plan map and zoning maps to actually implement, in the sense of provide zoning for the site. So that's kind of how we got here. The big picture, the 2008 concept plan is a big picture guide to create an employment campus north of Loader Road, mixed-use districts along Beaver Creek, kind of across from the high school and college, 2 mixed-use residential neighborhoods, and this is the key thing, this last bullet. We have these housing and job targets, which are actually have been adopted and we need to meet. So any new zoning we create, we have to show that we fit within those sideboards. And to honor the process to date, we are not reopening the process. We're not re-envisioning the plan. We're looking at providing zoning to implement the adopted plan. This next slide shows a picture of the Beaver Creek Road concept plan area that was adopted in 2008. So this area in blue is the North Employment Campus. Here's Clackamas Community College in Claremont, which is about right there. Yep. This is the Oregon City High School. And Myers Road is right here. So Myers Road will continue across Beaver Creek, and Glen Oak Road is right here. The area in purple is more of a mixed-use employment village. It'll have some ability for housing and some ability for jobs. The area in kind of orange is aligned for both single-family, kind of R5, 5,000 square foot lots, duplexes, triplexes, and multifamily. And that takes up a lot of it, the existing Oregon City Golf Course. So the very southern boundary is the southern boundary of the Oregon City Golf Course, just to kind of give you a sense of where you are in the concept plan boundaries. So what does this all mean? So I tried to create a couple bullets to distill a 60-page narrative. It's new land for living wage jobs in Oregon City. Through the concept plan process that happened in 2006 through 2008, there was this really great discussion about, well, we have a high school, we have a community college, and we have land for jobs. How can we leverage that collaboration? And so we really saw a great opportunity to do that. So zoning can create the permitted uses, and working with our economic development partners at the city and Clackamas County and the college and the high school, we're really looking at how, once it's zoned, how do we really work to make sure when businesses come in, we can leverage this new talent that's coming out of Clackamas Community College. And ideally, they can just go across the street to their new job. We heard definitely from like the Caulfield neighborhood, there's not a lot of amenities out in that area. Kind of have to drive for anything. So the idea of you could potentially walk to a restaurant or maybe a drugstore was really intriguing for a lot of people out in that area. So there's an opportunity there. There's kind of an idea to create a cohesive neighborhood. You know, a while back, the high school moved out. Well, first the college moved out to the kind of the country in the 60s. And the high school moved out. And we're kind of filling in the gap around them and trying to create a cohesive community around some of our two institutions. I know you probably are not surprised, but if we want to increase transit access in the southeast of Oregon City, one of the best ways we can do it is to provide a place with both jobs and housing, which means you're having ridership going both ways. So people are leaving in the morning to go to work, but also people are coming in to go to work. And that can really help raise ridership levels, which really can help when we work with TriMet over time to get better access out to our southeast part of Oregon City for transit. As working with our equitable housing project that's happening right now and going to public hearings, this area is a perfect example of a place that can provide kind of different housing options rather than kind of that 10,000 square foot or 8,000 square foot single family house. So cluster housing, cottage housing, some row house options, duplexes, triplexes are good. This is a good area for that implementation.
Can I ask a quick question about that? So the other two concept plans, Park Place and South End, had some design standards for optional housing.
Diving right into the big question of the day, are you?
Is proposed to be changed. Did this have design standards, and were they proposed or not proposed?
No, there were no proposed design standards in Beaver Creek Road concept plan. We are looking through the document and trying to identify urban design ideas that are brought in and trying to understand. So I can, as we go through the slides, I'll talk a little more about kind of how we're seeing that approach.
Is that housing portion of this, which is closer to the golf course, is that all relatively flat compared to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, or should we wait for the end?
If you could wait for a little bit, just because if we answer questions for each slide, some of your answers actually may be in future slides. So if we could hold off for a little bit, that would be really helpful. Oh, and also to honor the process that the public went through. We're not reopening and revisioning the plan this time. So the technical things that are going to get adopted are new comprehensive plan maps and zoning maps. Right now, the area that was brought into the urban growth boundary does not have a comprehensive plan map, and there are no city zonings in that area. The second piece is what Mr. Anderson was asking, is we're looking through the narrative document to try to find out, do we have to make any changes to the development code for the Beaver Creek area to ensure that it develops to the vision that the plan had? So things like residential design standards, they're not as much in this document as they were the other two. So we're kind of trying to tease out, and I'll talk more about the next public hearing and some of the questions we'll have. I think the key thing, and after 17 years in Oregon City, is how do we find this balance between, we don't want to underregulate, we don't want to overregulate. So how do we take a 60-page narrative document and maps and adopt code that we think will allow this area to be implemented over time through private development when property owners are ready. But we don't have such a curated vision that if anybody wants to have even a slightly different approach that absolutely meets the intent, that they have to go through an extreme side process. So we're trying to find that balance, and as we go through the next public hearings, we're gonna reach out to the public and ask, do you think we met that balance? So the process for development, in general, you have a concept plan is adopted, and then annexations happen over time. And at those annexations, usually you get your city zoning. Unfortunately, we've been a little bit slow through the Beaver Creek Road concept plan process because of some of the legal review that we've actually had some property owners annex into the city, but there was no city zone to give them. And so they're holding their county zone right now. And they can only do what is allowed in the county, and that's an FU10 zone, which means you can't further divide your property if you have less than 10 acres. So it's really a holding zone. So they're kind of the property owners right now that are annexed into the city are paying city taxes, but they have this holding zone waiting for the city zone to be applied. So where we are here is this concept plan adoption process of zoning and code amendments will rezone properties that are already in the city limits that have the county zone to their appropriate concept plan area zone, and then provide a comprehensive map designation. So if I'm a property within the concept plan area, but I'm still in the county, I now know what my city zone will be when I come into annex. And then after this is the zoning part, really development review and building construction is up to private property owners. So the city can go through this rezoning process this summer, adopt zoning designations for the property, amend the development code as needed, and really over the next 20 years, 30 years, property owners will decide when they're ready to develop. So really the market is the last two slides, and that will happen when the market is ready. So what else is really needed to implement the vision? This is what we call a zoning code amendment. So this is kind of the planner hat. Kind of the larger questions of sewer, water, storm, streets, and parks, timing and funding. There's still some questions. We can look to see if the development code and the zoning maps and the loads that we anticipate for the different zones are consistent with all of our adopted master plans, and we will be doing that analysis this summer. We'll be looking at our adopted transportation system plan, our water and storm. We have included those numbers. All of our utility master plans have accounted for the Beaver Creek Road concept plan area densities. Because it happened in 2008, we've already kind of built those numbers in. So we are assuming that the new zoning will be concurrent with the existing plans, but we'll be doing that check this summer, and our consultants that we've hired will be running those numbers, looking at our zoning maps, looking at the load we anticipate, and seeing if our assumptions are still correct. But the timing of them related to the analysis of can the market build all the infrastructure, those are some of those larger questions that really will have to happen after this zoning gets adopted. So there's some other things we are learning about transportation. So I have a transportation slide for you tonight. Kind of separate transportation into two categories. One, what do we need to do to verify that the proposed zones meet the transportation system plan and the transportation planning rule, as well as the alternate mobility standards we've adopted as a city. So we'll be running those numbers again and providing a memo. And then as development happens, proportional street upgrades will be required and system development fees will be paid. So development will happen at the time and they will be required to do their proportional upgrade for the project. So that will kind of happen slowly over time. Now, as we are going through the process and what we've heard from the public at public meetings is, there's some larger questions that we, working with John Lewis and our consultant team, we're looking at to see, is this something that we still think our assumptions from 2008 are correct. And so these questions under additional review can happen concurrent to what we're doing with rezoning, or they don't have to necessarily be resolved with the rezoning, but these are questions we are asking. One is we identified some roundabouts on Beaver Creek. So we are looking at a new signal at Myers Road Extension. So what's the relationship of signals and roundabouts on the same stretch of Beaver Creek? So we'll be doing that analysis. And is there what's the optimal combination? There's some discussion of Beaver Creek Road, especially in front of the high school and the college. It's been identified as a 3-lane segment with a center turn lane. And what would a 5-lane segment offer? Sometimes adding more lanes does not necessarily help congestion in the long run because you have a pinch point down at Beaver Creek and 213, but we can take a look and see there might have added safety options or other benefits that the city commission might want to look at. And then there's a larger question about Holly Lane, and I'll go back to the map just to show you. There we go. So there still is a goal to have this parallel road to Beaver Creek hook up to Holly Lane, pass through Maple Lane. Long picture. So I call this my 50 to 60 year planner hat. But the question is, how does that affect our system in the near term when that connection isn't made? And so we're going to make sure we're running those numbers in our transportation system plan to see what assumptions were made based on Holly Lane in the near term, and does that have any effect? And we don't know yet. We're looking back to see what assumptions were done on that, but the public brought that up, so we want to research that and get back to the public. Okay, so how you can stay involved. This is a slide. I have some more information about the different zone areas. So this slide is just generic. We had a public meeting in January. We'll have a new one. Our second meeting is April 9th at Oregon City High School. Actually, I think it's at 7 to 8:30. And we have work sessions with the Planning Commission and City Commission in May and June. And then we hope to start hearings maybe July, August. We're still working on the timing for that. We also have an open house on June 10th here in front of City Hall, just to circle back with the public after the April 9th meeting. But I want to just do a little review of what we presented to the public in the January meeting to get you up to speed. So if you are involved in the April meeting, you can provide great comment. So what our consultant team and city staff was started with is we looked at the existing city zoning codes that we had in our zoning. We identified the Beaver Creek Road concept plan goals, and then try to see if things lined up and if there is a mismatch. We're still working on that right now. But generally, we've identified the following zones that we think most align, and that is the North Employment Campus, more like campus industrial. So campus industrial is what you see, a good example is Benchmade Knives, where they are located is a campus industrial zone. Mixed use employment village is a mixed use employment zone. Those two campus industrial MUE zones are kind of alike. I like to call them industrial uses inside a building zone, not necessarily large open space or giant yards or, aggregate mining or kind of large, intense sound or noise or smell kind of uses. That would be something that you would allow in general industrial. Our Main Street node right at Glen Oak, we kind of see a mixed use corridor. That's what you see on 7th Street. And the West mixed use neighborhood is kind of our multifamily zone. And the East mixed use neighborhood is our medium density residential zone, which is R5. So what we're working on right now is those are the zones we think, but there may be some permitted uses we may add or take away, or conditional uses we may add or take away, or prohibited we may add and take away just for the Beaver Creek zone, concept plan area. So just to show you generally where we see those zones right now. So these are kind of R2 and R5, mixed use corridor, mixed use employment, and campus industrial. So the Beaver Creek development concepts, what we heard, the question is how much residential design came out? Not as much. These are kind of the big things that we heard when we read through the document. Create a unique sense of place, so that has a little bit of design questions. Want sustainability standards was really encouraged. Connectivity in promoting multimodal linkages. So can you walk, can you bike, can you take transit there? Landscaping and perimeter compatibility standards specifically for the community just south, just in the county, right next to the golf course, as well as just to the north. There's a subdivision, the very north of the concept plan area, as well as some of the county development to the east. And then required land use review to coordinate improvements. So there was a requirement for a master plan in the concept plans. We're trying to understand how best to work through that. Since 2008, there's been a fair amount of legal cases coming down through Oregon about clear and objective standards for housing and telling people to go through a master plan process and to show concurrency with a 60-page narrative document is not clear and objective. So we're working with our attorneys to try to figure out the best way to provide a clear and objective path for housing. So real briefly, the North Employment Campus, these are some examples of what could be allowed there. And we were asking the public in January what types of industries should be accommodated, that we want to have high wage jobs and a high jobs density. So we don't want to zone something and have, one employee per, acre. That's not helpful for our jobs target in Oregon City. And is there any maximum size that we would put on? Is there too big of a development that would be too much and we would want to not allow? So those are some of the questions we asked the public. The mixed use employment village is a little more, it allows kind of more office use, things you would see kind of on 7th Street. A little bit of housing could be allowed, some commercial could be allowed. Our little Main Street node on Glen Oak is really looking for a very pedestrian friendly block or two, maybe parking in the rear and, cafe seating in front, kind of that little community node where you can walk to that restaurant with your family after work or at lunch if you work in the North Employment area. So these are the questions we asked for mixed use. Are there any design requirements we should have? Should we require ground floor retail or should we let the market choose? What's the proportional of commercial to residential? Should we let the market choose everything or should we say we need to have a minimum of one of the two? The West mixed use neighborhood is our high density, R2, so here's some example of high density residential, which is about 20 units an acre. It's about 1 unit for every 2,000 gross square feet of a lot. And that's the zone we have today citywide for multifamily. This shows kind of that R5, what a townhome or a cluster housing would look like if it wasn't a single family detached house. So some of the residential discussions were what type of housing types should be permitted, under what conditions would commercial uses be viable if they were allowed, how important it is to require an alley network. So that's some of the conversations that are happening right now with the Park Place and South End Road. And what tools should we look at for the transition and that buffering around the perimeters? So that all happened in January. We got some great feedback for the public. We had a meeting at Oregon City High School Library. We had a presentation. We broke up into groups and we wrote down lots of information. And we have a great comment tracker actually that we are going to be putting up online this Friday, I believe, and that we will track public comments all the way through the hearings process. So as all the next meetings happen. If you can, attend the April 9th meeting at Oregon City High School Library. If you can't, we'll probably as well do an online version of the questions. So the last meeting, for about 2 weeks afterwards, we had an online form you could fill out with different questions. And we brought that into our comment tracker and we got a fair amount of questions or comments. We'll probably do the same thing. So if you can't attend, follow our website, and should be a link on the TAC agenda today. It's also on the city's planning page on the top right-hand side of the blue column, the Beaver Creek Road concept plan. And follow our public tracking spreadsheet. And if you have any specific questions, I'll answer them tonight. But as I move forward, you can always email me. My email's above there, or ask John and he can come find me and answer the question. So that's my presentation. So I'm happy to take questions from the group and I can go back on the slide if we need.
In your traffic analysis, can you model what happens when Meyer Road gets connected to 213 and Myers Road? That's an improvement that's coming in. So would that divert traffic from the overloaded Beaver Creek 213 I mean, could you actually analyze that? And I don't know, maybe Glen Oak goes all the way over to 213 as well. And if that's all connected and integrated, does that take movement off of 213 and Beaver Creek?
Right, so they will, the model will incorporate those changes, John, even though the Myers Road's not built, but they would, not built yet, we're about
Yeah,
ready to
Myers
go.
Road should get built pretty soon.
Should be built by the time the concept plan's in place, yes,
You probably wish you had a traffic circle in there too when it goes.
instead of a signal.
Traffic circle.
In-
I'm just teasing you, at Myers Road.
Oh, yeah, Myers Road, we've got a signal there, and
Yeah.
we've got a development right at that intersection that's proposing to build the fourth leg, so it's kind of, it felt like that decision to change to a roundabout would be a big change.
Yeah, those are all great questions. We're just finalizing the scope with our sub-consultant to run those numbers and have that memo available. We'll hopefully have some preliminary findings at the April meeting, I hope. But if not, we'll share them as we find them.
Is there multiple landowners or is there just a few? And so as long as they're on board, you don't end up with the inability to put a road through that needs to go through in a certain time.
Yeah, well, timing's always there. There's probably a combination. There's a fair amount of large, but there's also some people who own some very small parcels. So it's probably a combination of both. I want to reiterate, and you of all groups know this, I'll go back to the overlay plan. The streets that are identified on this concept plan are conceptual. So actual street locations will happen at the time of a development application. And development application, you're required to do shadow platting. So the first one in, you get the joy to pay for the shadow platting. Granted, you get a little bit of the control, but we have to make sure that the shadow plat that has been identified generally meets the concepts of these road areas, but then we also understand how it will be implemented over time, over cross borders. So generally we like streets, if we can, to hug between two property lines. So different, we can do half streets at different times, and we don't want a shadow plat to go through a lot where it really prohibits the implementation. So we will look at that shadow platting, kind of the detailed at the time of development. But these are kind of guiding principle main street locations, but there are some block densities for subdivisions. So for example, in the east mixed-use neighborhood and west mixed-use neighborhood, there's another level of block streets we just don't see here. These are kind of these larger big picture connections we want to see, but the final street layout will happen at the time of development.
Just north of here, I think there were some plans for some live-work apartments.
Yes, right here. Where's Myers Road? Right here. Right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember right, the sewer is at absolute capacity there. And if you develop this new area, what in the world can we do about the sewer capacity? Well, infrastructure itself, and in conjunction with that, it sounds like a Beaver Creek Road expansion is kind of a catch-22, where if you expand Beaver Creek to handle the new developments, you're still stuck with a pinch point at Highway 213, which, of course, they've just gone through a whole process of trying to improve that intersection without too much success, except that new on-ramp.
So I'm going to answer some of the questions, and I'll send some to John, so I'll attempt first, and you come in and pinch it for me. So the sewer, the live-work apartments that are kind of right across from the high school, this was an odd situation where they were actually in the old 1980 UGB. There were a couple little parcels on the east side of Beaver Creek Road that were in the old 1980 UGB. They're in the concept plan boundaries, but when they annexed, we were required to give them a zone because they were not bound by the concept plan. So the mixed-use corridor zone, which actually were not identifying for them, but mixed-use employment would be their new zone. But They were approved for an apartment complex that had live work. It was approved, they're in the building permit process and they're kind of taking their time. And so people have asked and they will stay within the building permit process until they time out. And so as far as we know, they're just moving really slowly. So, and if for some reason they did time out and we rezoned, they would start again and do something that met the zoning. But as far as we know, it's still moving forward. In this situation, they were able to gain access from the sewer on Glen Oak Road, and because of its depth, that was about as far as it could go. The new sewer expansion we're looking at is coming down from the north, and the city, through an economic development grant, was able to extend the sewer. And John, did it go all the way to Claremont?
It goes close to the high school.
Close to the high school. So we're not all the way there, but we're close. So that will have to continue and be added on to add that capacity for sewer. So in the situation with the multifamily, they kind of were able to use the last bit of capacity that was in that sewer pipe coming off of Glen Oak Road. So basically no one else can hook into that system. We're gonna have to look at capacity coming from the north. Am I right there for most of that?
Yeah, maybe I can simplify it a little bit. When that developed, we hadn't built the sewer line out in Beaver Creek Road, and getting sewer all the way there for that one development was not really a project that penciled. So they submitted on a plan that required them to do a fair amount of upgrades and contribute a fair amount to future capacity for the sewer line that goes towards Highway 213, if you will, out Glen Oak Road. But now with the extension that we did last year, they're much closer to it, and in combination with some other development out there, I think they're looking at, instead of going through the Glen Oak Road area, which had the capacity limitation, spending that money on the Beaver Creek Road extension, and that isn't a capacity problem. Yeah, and then with regard to your concerns about the Beaver Creek 213 intersection, this committee spent a lot of time on that. So as you know, we went through the alternate mobility study, which assumed full build out of this area. And yes, we're gonna see more congestion there, but with that right turn lane, dedicated right turn lane, and what I think they're calling, I don't know if they've landed on a name exactly, but an acceleration lane, that was that project, with a couple of other pedestrian improvement projects, was determined to get us to a standard that we could live with, although it exceeded the current state standard. So that's what required the Oregon Transportation Commission to make a special decision for this project, or this area. So.
So how would that affect your sales pitch to industries that would want to move into this new area?
Yeah, we are definitely talking to the, to groups that are looking at making things and sending them back out again. We've actually heard about looking at the freight route and freight timing. They actually do things at like 10 a.m. They don't want to move freight during rush hour. And the AM peak is actually like 7 o'clock or something. That's really early for Oregon City, for where we have the congestion. And so moving freight is not necessarily as much of an impact for folks that are looking at that, making things and sending them out. We're still having that larger conversation. A lot of these properties people are looking at, but as you know, until you get the zoning, a lot of people don't want to close on a sale or really make that decision. So there's a lot of people floating around and kind of questions, and we know people are interested, but this is one of the next hurdles that are needed before kind of agreements can be made and land can be sold.
I look at some of the areas in Wilsonville and Canby, and my mouth just waters with the possibilities, of those sort of developments in Oregon City. It'd be great.
I had a few questions. One, you mentioned like system development charges. There's a lot of infrastructure to be here. Some of it is on TSP, which means, with the SDC charges, would there be specific SDC charges for this concept area? Or the SDC charges will be readjusted across the whole city for transportation, storm, sewer, water, and all?
So all of the CIP projects should, for all of our plans, of the Beaver Creek Road area should already be, they're already integrated into our CIP list. So if I am a developer, or I'm a property owner selling to develop, and I'm building, I don't know, an 800,000 square foot industrial building, I'll go through site plan designer review, I'll look at my requirements for infrastructure, I'll build what I'm proportionally required, so maybe I do part of the frontage of Beaver Creek or part of the frontage of Thayer Road, and then I pay my systems development fees based on my use, and that goes through our building division and our engineering division, and that money then goes into our system development fee, our STC funds. So one thing we have heard over and over and over again from economists as we look at the 3 concept plan areas is do not dedicate specific projects to specific areas, because it really restricts the ability for cities to choose the next thing. You're basically restricting your fiscal, but your bank accounts suddenly get separated, all these little bank accounts, and you can't put them together. So those go in, and then it's really the city commission that, and working with John, to realize what's the next step. So a good example of, this push and pull question of, we have congestion, but why is it helpful to get more development if we have congestion? And one of the answers I do say is, a lot of your system development projects can only be built when they are paid for by growth, right? And so things like the right turn acceleration lane, properties that build here will pay, because that's now added on to the capital improvement plan list, they'll pay their STCs, and we can move forward collectively as a city probably faster than normal to put that development in because we're getting the system development fees. But we as a city have this larger bucket, and we can make the policy decisions about what's the next project we do citywide. And so those larger questions really go to your elected officials of, what's the next project? And then also, oftentimes system development fees are used as matching for grants. And so, sometimes it's, well, this grant is up. We think we can get a 2-to-1 or a 5-to-1 match if we put system development fees money in, and if this project really fits with the goals of this grant, so we'll apply and we get it. I kind of call it the 50% off coupon. So it's hard to, you got to align yourself for those opportunities as well as what the city commission is really, looking at for next opportunities.
Also, you mentioned affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. Equitable housing.
What?
Equitable housing.
Equitable housing. How do you assure that that happens?
Yeah, so I want to differentiate affordable housing with equitable housing. So affordable housing is an actual rate identified by both state and feds about a certain percentage of median family income. And the market generally can't build affordable housing. There's usually tax credits or a nonprofit involved. So that's a separate piece. What we're looking for, and that happens outside of any zoning code. So that is where different organizations get together and, gather funds or try to get affordable housing tax credit, or work with a nonprofit like Northwest Housing Alternatives or the Clackamas Housing Authority to put a project together. That's affordable housing, and then there's income restrictions. What we've been doing for the last 2 years is looking at what we call equitable housing, and really is saying, we're hearing a lot from people in Oregon City that they want to stay in the city they love, but they're not really in a place to own a single family home on a 7,000 square foot lot. Or maybe they have lived in that home and they want to downsize and go to a smaller unit in their retirement. There's not a lot of options for that in Oregon City. And so when we say equitable housing, we're trying to provide different housing options for people all within the spectrum of their life. Be it, I just got out of college, I'm 25, where am I living? To, my kids just got out of the house, they're all in college, and this is too big of a house, but I want to stay in Oregon City. So when we say equitable housing, we're looking at how do we provide housing for everybody in all different points in their life. So that could be like house conversions for older homes, duplexes, triplexes, row houses, kind of cluster housing, which is like cottage housing. So those are some other opportunities, but for all these zones, like the medium density R5 zone, single family housing is a permitted use. So some of the conversations we're looking at for zoning is, do we just say, here are all your options, let the market figure it out? And if the market wants to choose all R5 subdivisions, well, the market chose that. Or do we have to require a minimum number of different units other than R5? So that's that community conversation we're having.
You showed in your presentation that development review process is like 1 to 2 years. And I'm working with Business Oregon, and they have, for example, Shovel Ready program, which says I need to be able to build 180 days. Nothing here tells me that would be feasible for somebody wants to bring a piece of land and market it through state of Oregon Shovel Ready program, because it takes way longer than what state expects.
Well, that's to build from the very first pre-application conference to opening day. So on your answer with Shovel Ready, exactly right. We need to get zoning in place. We need to understand all of our infrastructure issues and be really to tell someone, this is what you need to build, like exactly, and not negotiating back and forth, like this is what you need to build. And then, 180 days falls within the Oregon land use process. So, we can get a site plan and design review out, and we're bound to do it within 120 days of submitting. So, we can move to try to get more shovel ready, and we say 1 to 2 years. This is really for the public who go from the moment that someone is interested in development and coming to the city at the front desk to they cut the ribbon on the opening day. It takes about, might take about 1 to 2 years. That depends on how quickly people move. Sometimes it's the applicant who's moving slow because the market, it's hard to get consultants to, get you what you need. So the shovel ready aspect and working with Business Oregon is something our economic development department is really interested in. There's a regionally significant, the RESIS designation. There's a kind of a designation to help kind of incentivize development in the kind of North Employment Campus and availability for that and other programs through Business Oregon. So we are looking at that. But I think the first step is we have to zone first.
No, I understand once the zone, but if your process, once zoning, and let's say I own or acquire a piece of land and it's going to take me 1 year to go through a land use, for example, that's not acceptable. It needs to be,
Right, so how can we
assure that's a smooth sailing through the process, that all those things can be met and you would be able to, sign off and start issuing permits.
Yeah, absolutely. And so do we support, if they're ready, if they have everything they need, can we support concurrent building review? Those are kind of things we're looking at, yeah.
Okay.
I have a question about the code amendments.
Sure.
I'm trying to see if form-based code or link code is being considered in this area.
Oregon City has not pursued a form-based code, but after 17 years, I can kind of tell you, we have a narrative version of a form-based code. If anybody knows what form-based, does anybody know what form-based code is? So it's kind of, you look at, it's a nice, really descriptive book that kind of really explains the urban design of a place. And it matters less what goes in, but what it looks like. And Oregon City just has never been in a place to adopt kind of that pretty picture booklet. So what we've tried to do over the years is take the goal of a form-based code of trying to, what are the really important, as I call them, the Lego, like where you put the Legos on the lot, where the size, massing, location of things and how we get that right. And so we've tried to translate form-based code goals into a narrative. So for example, in Oregon City, to try to create more of a pedestrian-oriented experience for new development, we don't allow parking lots in front of buildings. And so built parking lots are to the side and behind. We do that through a narrative code rather than a nice pretty picture. So I like to say we have a narrative form-based code.
Cool, thank you.
So as this develops, is there use of the planned unit development? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, in Oregon City, we don't have a planned unit development or PUD code, but we have master plans, which can be done, and absolutely, private development can come in and come up with a master plan. And one nice thing about master plans is you can go to the planning commission and you can amend city code. If you say, well, we want to do this and we think it meets or exceeds the intent of your code, but we need this, or we need to do this in phases, and we need to offset improvements into different phases, that's negotiated out at the planning commission hearing through a public hearings process.
Has planning staff had an opportunity to go to Fairview and look at Fairview Village?
Yeah, Fairview Village and Villebois are both great examples of PUDs, so Villebois and Wilsonville and Fairview Village. I think we're really looking forward if private development, we can't force a PUD,
Right.
so we're really, we're open if private development is interested in doing PUDs or master plans. I saw on the planning's end, it's nice because you can think through things in big pictures, and you can look at infrastructure timing. It's actually harder when little things come in one at a time and you're
Right.
trying to look at proportional improvement. So we like plan unit developments and master plans because we can really look at the large scale impacts and see how they can be phased.
Final question on the industrial part there.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been discussions about, or is there enterprise zones up there?
I think we are we in enterprise zone? I think this is an enterprise zone area.
Yeah, because that should provide a
You're
good
not sure?
carrot to get.
Oh, no,
some
we're an
of
opportunity zone. Sorry, that's another, opportunity zone is another,
Okay.
investment,
Incentive.
incentive, yeah.
And I know most cities don't do it here, I've talked to John on occasion, but sometimes to get a coordinated development when you don't have one big landowner, is you force the development of some roads, you use eminent domain, and you turn around and assess them for their fair share so that the development proceeds as it's planned, and you can't have one property owner blocking the whole thing.
Well, that's always an option in Oregon City, but the other thing we're looking at, and once again, this is kind of different than the zoning, that's kind of the next steps, is there's advanced finance districts, which is another option. Two developers that I know of over time have done that, where, for example, the Maple Road area pond was oversized by one developer. And then as subsequent subdivisions came in, not associated with his development, he was paid back over time.
Yeah.
There was another sewer expansion in South End that did that, where subsequent subdivisions were paid back, but that's that larger negotiation. There's local improvement districts, which you kind of have to all be involved in. It is an option. So those are all ways of kind of looking at implementation of infrastructure all at once, but kind of figuring out who pays.
John, we did talk to, there's been a variety of development teams that have been interested in this Beaver Creek concept area, and we've, some of those tougher areas to develop, I'd say that area that's off to the, I guess it'd be the west of Beaver Creek Road, between the community college and the high school. There's several long lots back in there.
Where it says environmentally sensitive resource
Trying to
area.
get, between the environmental sensitive area, between the power lines, and between the existing properties, trying to get Loader Road through there. We talked to them about the idea of doing a local improvement district, because that would be good for, all those property owners, assuming they were interested in seeing something different than what's there today. And, I think it's understood that code exists and it's pretty user-friendly, but,
Well, yeah,
trying to find
that's how you get shovel-ready stuff in part two, by assessment district.
Yeah,
and get it set
yeah.
up.
But how do you, I guess, following on John, and I'm looking this map, and let's say I have a bunch of land, but I have a road that I need to get through the mixed employment, and that owner is not keen of doing anything for next 10 years. I can't do anything. Will there be something that can force this individual to dedicate the right of way, or?
So there's something in the zoning code. So this is where I kind of put my planner hat out and say, zoning code can only do so much. So there's larger city policies or questions that have other opportunities. Now, luckily, south of Loader Road, we kind of, except for the smaller parcels, we kind of have two families that own the parcel south of Loader. So that's helpful as we move forward. Those areas will probably develop in two chunks, so that is helpful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, condemnation is not a word we take lightly, but it's a tool in the toolbox and gets used.
But
from
it can
time to
be
time.
used.
Yep.
But that's a decision of the city commission and kind of a larger policy direction.
Yeah.
Well, I got a couple of questions, just because I always have a couple of questions. One is, I know you touched upon it a little earlier, but is there any thought being given in the long range, in the short range, I should probably, to establishing locations for main connections, main roads north and east of Beaver Creek? The locations, so that properties develop, so we can say that when the gentleman that's, 2 lots away from there will actually have a spot to be able to say, this is where the street is going to go, if and when, so that there's some determination made that we're not becoming a spaghetti street area, like some areas I can think of in town.
Connectivity is really important, and really as of 2003, we've required connectivity analysis and how to make sure that your street location works for the larger network and things like Holly Lane. So even if you are farther south, but you kind of are starting that trajectory, you might have to kind of shadow plat it out. It's not a legal plat, where it's just it's a plan that we keep using to keep further refining. But yeah, that's how development works for these roads, is the first development in has to kind of spend the money to do the shadow plat, and then we have to, through a public hearings process, work with the property owners next door and identify, is this makes sense for the best alignment.
That's where these larger annexation areas, like Park Place, make so much more sense to the planning of that, where you can actually have a large enough piece of the pie to master plan it, so that you can answer questions like,
how do I get from A to B?
If it goes piece by piece, you might require the developer to build, a couple thousand feet of roadway, but it doesn't really talk about how it's going to cross that canyon, for instance, right? Whereas in a master plan like what we're seeing coming together for the Park Place area, we've got one developer who's got most of the land under control, who's going to actually be able to phase that out and document that in a master plan that suggests how it's going to be funded, when it's going to be built. And so the beauty of some of these concept plans is they make you look at that a lot closer. And it'd be nice if we had, in this one, after we get through the zoning, some of those property owners with a lot more at stake, because they have ownership rights, to pursue a master plan. That would be ideal.
Which kind of leads me to the other question I have, is what role can we have in facilitating this as a committee? Not as independent citizens, but as a sitting here committee.
Yeah, I think it would be great if Christina, there's at some point going to become an actual legislative adoption process for the code changes and the zoning, adoption of zoning.
And
right?
the shadow plan?
Is that true?
No, that will be at time of development of any individual application.
But this work that you're going through right now, there's an adoption process.
Yeah, our goal is to start the hearings process in late July or August, so I could come, by the time we get to July, or, let's see, you are the end of the month, right? So I could come at the July meeting or the August meeting.
July,
August, we don't meet.
Oh.
But we could.
But you're welcome to come anyway.
I'll just put the camera on me, I'll talk to space.
Yeah.
So that's one option, I can come back. I think we'll still probably be hearings in maybe we might be finished September. I won't be here at the end of June, so I can't, but Flora can come, she can present, but we'll do what we can to get the information back to you.
I'd like to suggest
Or maybe
if we can make a difference to go ahead and have a special meeting in July or August.
Yeah, if we need it, we will. So let's make sure we're figuring that out, timeline.
All right,
We
well,
can do it
thank
in
you.
June, great. If we can't,
I have one
we'll do
last,
something else.
I have one question.
sure, yeah.
Has Henrici Road, Redland, that been considered for transportation?
Well, Henrici is outside the urban
I-
growth boundary.
Right.
So it's that collaboration with the county, right? So, as you know, cars don't care where jurisdictions are. So we know at these urban edges, we have this collaborative discussion with the county. And then, you know, as we look at both of our TSPs, what projects the county has and what projects we have, but the city won't be spending our TSP money on projects outside of our urban
Right.
growth boundary and especially city limits. And so it's that collaboration with the county, but Henrici Road does go, you know, between the two, but it's not at this time will be upgraded to an urban form because it's not inside the urban growth boundary. So the county, if they have any projects, they're probably looking at safety projects. It's not a capacity project.
Right, for this one, the more important one is Holly Lane. Holly Lane is gonna be both in this concept plan, it goes outside the city and then comes back into the Park Place concept plan. And, you know, trying to get the county, and the greater community members that live out there wrapped around the idea of extending Holly Lane, that's been a problem. And
So
that's,
you can incorporate Redland Road.
Redland Road would become, I mean, that's kind of the destination for the Holly
Right,
Lane.
for the Holly
piece.
Lane.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that's more like a 50 years out.
Well, the problem is we can build,
Well,
you know-
well, I would say this, one of the work items that we're doing, right now, aside from analyzing Beaver Creek Road, is it's been important to me to make sure we look at Holly Lane, because if the timing of Holly Lane matters, like I think it matters, right? We do have a bottleneck at Beaver Creek in 213, and a lot of that solution involved the connection of Holly Lane. So we, you know, when do we hit that threshold? What's the timeline look like for that? Can we do it, do we need to do it in 15 or 20 years? Or is it a 50 or 60 year solution? That's part of the analysis that we're working with DKS to kind of resolve.
I mean, I was looking here, you're creating employment center. You said 5,000 jobs and some housing, right? But the Park Place is mostly housing, right? And they gotta go down, like, use that bottleneck and put more congestion on 213 and all that stuff, rather than being able to come into the employment center. In a
Well,
different
except
way.
for, I mean, traffic flows both directions, so we've got a lot of people out east on the county roads, and we've got a lot of residential in the Park Place area that may very well have employment or want to get to this area, as opposed to going out onto Redland Road or out into Abernathy Road, into that town center, or down through Main Street, right? So there's a distribution of trips. Is the majority of the trips pointed at 213? Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking you're creating employment center.
Yep.
And you're creating housing center and
Sure, but we also have a city that is under employed inside their city limits. So, you know, the larger question, if we want to help our jobs housing imbalance, adding more jobs inside the city limits for Oregon City residents. Now, granted, it's a macro analysis, so I can't guarantee every single person who works there also lives in Oregon City, because the economy is the economy. But, you know, one of the best things we can do to reduce trips out onto 205 is to provide more job opportunities for our residents. And so, and then also, and a great example, real quick story, when the Arch Bridge was being worked on, 2012, a lot of Main Street business owners were really worried that they were going to lose all their Westland clients because they didn't want to do 205. What they found is they did do that, but they also gained a ton of more Oregon City clients that hadn't really thought about going downtown yet, but because of the congestion, they went downtown. So, you know, there are a lot of people, the more amenities we can provide inside our city, the more reasons we give people to go visit the business in Oregon City and not get in your car and drive to Clackamas Town Center. So providing more of these amenities, I think, is helpful in that macro sense too.
I agree, I mean,
Yeah.
I'd still like to see the 82nd Street Bridge rebuilt to allow vehicle traffic instead of sewer lines.
Are you ready to wrap this and let Christina go, or we're gonna be here all night?
Well, if nobody has any more questions, I am quite sure that we can say thank you.
All right, well,
and-
thank you very much.
And we'll
Thanks-
look
thanks
forward
for
to your
coming out.
next
Yeah,
visit.
absolutely. Thank you for indulging me in our project.
All right, thanks, Christina. All right, so,
Oh, okay, John, it looks like you're up next.
yeah, and I'm gonna accelerate a couple of the things that I wanted to talk about. And Jason's here, so he wants to talk about striping as well. But the first item is funding for street work. And really, I don't have a graphic for you. It's just we're in the middle of budget season right now. And so looking at, it's been helpful to, it's always good to look at our budgets, but it's kind of been helpful because we've got a couple of big projects that are looming. The Myers Road project, and that we've been talking a fair amount about, and the Malala Avenue project, which I'm gonna cover this one right now. So Malala Avenue, we've got open house tomorrow night. It's out on First Street at the Public Works, well, it's not the Public Works, it's the Oregon City Operations Complex. And so let me get that name wrong. It's in that building, obviously that building's really just warehouse space, but we're gonna house in there from 7 to 9 tomorrow. And then, of course, I know you all want to come to the city commission meeting directly after that. But the intent there is to have, we've basically got 30% design. You're going to see a lot of things about what we're thinking for roadway section, what we're thinking for signalization improvements. First Street has been added to the signalization of Malala Avenue. So we're going to replace the signal at Claremont. We're going to replace the signal at Gaffney Lane. And we're going to add a signal at First Street. We've also got some mid-block pedestrian locations, some medians. We've got some bike lanes with, I think in some places we're able to squeeze in a separated bike lane. So there's even potential for some entry concepts. So we'll have an opportunity to give us some of your thoughts on entry concepts. So I encourage you all to show up for that, okay?
Is it open house format, like come
Yes,
and go?
open house, come and go.
Or is it sit down and listen?
No, there's gonna be somebody there to welcome you, and then there's gonna be some stations for you to kind of learn about the project and provide input. So, be there or be square.
I think in your notes, you said you were starting to suspect there's gonna be some more increased costs for infrastructure or something like that?
Yeah, we're tracking the costs. We've added a water line as part of the idea of future service to the south and east, just trying to think about how to move water out that direction. So we've added a 18-inch water line into the project. We added the First Street signal. That's an add. So if I can flip back to the funding for street work, we've been reserving a fair amount of money just because we knew we had to fund the match. If you remember, we got a $4 million, just under $4 million grant, and we had dedicated street pavement maintenance and transportation STC funds to this project. But still, just knowing the cost of construction and knowing where bid prices have been going, and just knowing the potential, we submitted that application with a very, very conceptual grant. And so as we get and learn more and more about the details of that one, we're learning more about the existing road section and the fact that there's not a lot of base under that existing road section. So we're likely going to have to reconstruct the majority of that roadway. So all those things mean costs, not necessarily more costs, but we're seeing tighter and tighter. Our project manager is saying, we need to reserve some funding for the First Street signal, for instance, which wasn't part of that, or the water line.
The water line should be coming out of different funds anyways, out of your water, SDCs or.
Right, it is.
Budget.
It is, but it's still, those aren't as healthy as even the transportation fund are, so. So anyway, just kind of wanted to touch on the fact that, our transportation fund is funded through gas taxes. And our typical revenue is about $2 million in gas taxes a year. We also received a little shot in the arm with House Bill 2017, which provided a little more funding, which at the tune of around $600,000 a year for that. So those are good. That's good for our revenues. And then on the pavement maintenance utility fee, we collect almost 2.6 million a year now for pavement maintenance. And so what the message is that we're going to be able to fund those projects. We feel confident with that, and we're going to fund. We were really holding back on the 2019 pavement maintenance projects. We were going to do Jason's kind of slurry seal, micro seal projects. We usually spend about $300,000 a year for that, so we're going to go ahead and fund that. But we're also going to put together a project to do some pavement maintenance work that's more like reconstruct or mill and pave. So there was a question in our mind about whether or not we should really fund that, and based on our review, it looks like we've got the potential to do that. So I kind of wanted to share that. The projects, I think that some of the projects that you might be interested in are definitely Molalla and Myers Road. We're looking at, there's a little gap in Gaffney Lane out near the school there where there's a bottleneck there, and that project's been on the books for a while to try and widen it right there. And we'd really like to get that done. That'll help with school kids trying to walk to school because there's a little gap right there. So we've included that one. We're also including some money as kind of placeholder funding for I think a good example of this is what we did on Partlow Road, where we tried to get in some sidewalk connectivity combined with or bike lane connectivity combined with a paving project. So we're allocating some dollars for that. We're still interested in completing a quiet zone, although we're finding out more. We're soon to meet with the railroad again on that project, but it looks to me like that's going to be a fairly expensive project by the time we're done with that, because it requires improvements at 10th and Railroad, and also at 11th and Railroad. There's a pedestrian crossing there, so that's looking like an expensive project, and we've really just put in some kind of money match dollars there. It's probably going to be partially funded through development dollars and partially funded through grants. So, and possibly general fund.
Is that one of the goals of the
commission? Yeah.
So wouldn't they be able to reappropriate the funds from other projects to that, if that's their priority?
Yes and no. I mean, right now with their hands tied on the urban renewal funds, they don't really have a lot of funds to reappropriate. It's not like we fund a lot of
transportation funds or maintenance funds and say use them for.
Well, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're plugging in a little bit of dollars for that through those funds as well. So, yeah. So that's, I think, the gist of it. The other little piece is system development charges. Those are harder for us to know exactly what we're going to be drawing in because we don't know how much development's going to happen and when it's going to happen. But we've been tracking about 1.4 million a year from transportation system development charges. So that could get really high if development happens quickly, or it could fall off if it doesn't. But that's kind of what we budgeted to spend. And we've got, obviously we're helping to fund Myers Road and Molalla. That's part of the way we'll fund Gaffney Lane and that little project as well. And then, yeah, just a lot of little sidewalk connectivity and trying to implement some of these TSP related bike and ped projects. So I think we're in good shape. We can give you more on budget. We'll probably do another budget, what do we call it? But when Myrea comes and shares a little bit more about budget, we'll probably do that for you guys once we get an adopted budget. Any questions about funding for street work? Okay. Jason, you want to talk about long line striping?
Sure. So there was two maps, right? One map shows what we're going to stripe this year, and it breaks it out with a multi, or just a double yellow, or a single skip. So that gives you an idea what we're going to stripe this year. And the other map is kind of a predictive map, and I just kind of put together over the years what we've striped over the years and worked with our GIS, and it's kind of a predictive map of when roads get striped, but it's not, it doesn't show the whole story because some of the streets that are getting striped this year will get striped next year. They have to get striped every year. It's just depending on terrain and the traffic. Like Anchor Way has to get striped every year. And then same with the Center Street Hill has to get striped every year. So it doesn't really show the whole picture, but it gives you an idea of kind of how far out some of the streets are and how long it takes them to, it's a tool for me to use.
I got a question for you, Jason.
Mhm.
You sure we can't stripe the rest of First Street from the corner up to Malala? I mean, it looks silly to have a street that's half striped striped at one end fully and no stripes at the other end of it, and it stops in the middle.
Yeah, I can't really answer to why it is like that.
Well,
It just-
I got a
it is
fair
like
idea
that.
of why it's that way, and I don't give a rip. I want to know when it's going to get fixed. Either take all the stripes out or extend it.
Yeah, we probably won't change it until we pave it again, and it's not too far off from paving. I think the reason why it got striped the way it did is because of all the curves through the,
Actually, the reason why is because there used to be a hole in the middle where there wasn't any street.
yeah, I'm not sure if that's the reason why.
Yeah, it was there when it wasn't, there
So
was no.
it was your decision, is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm trying to say it just ended down there until
Yeah, I think,
about 15 years ago.
from my
20 years
perspective,
ago.
it's a straight road section all the way to where it starts
Yeah.
getting striped.
Yeah,
then
and that
from
was the
then on,
end of it, there at the distributors.
Yeah, I just.
The rest of that is new.
But it's been that way it's been new for,
Yeah, well-
several years.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to say is that the part that's not striped is decades older than the part that is.
Yeah, and the point that I'm trying to say is, I don't think that it ever needed a stripe on the straight section. I don't think there's a need for striping there. So why spend the dollars on striping?
So why have a street that's only striped halfway?
Well, because I think the reason that we've always striped it that way is because of all the curvature of the road in the section between Beaver Creek Road and where it gets straight, right? All that has got, there's horizontal curves throughout all that section there.
True.
So I think that's why it's been striped that way. And we've kind of tried to stay away from a lot of those streets that are real wide, that don't necessarily have high volumes of traffic, that are, that you don't have trouble keeping folks in one driveway or the other. And we've never had an accident history there that would suggest that the way it's striped is
I
problematic.
can't remember one either.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe it would have something to do with the on-street parking from the old section.
Basically, when they built the new one, striping was part of the requirement for building the new one.
Right.
And so it was, from
We
day
would have to
one, it
stripe
was
by-
striped just because it had to be in order to get past.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if to match what's,
No,
you gotta
wasn't it-
put your bike lanes in and everything, and then you would eliminate all that on-street parking that's been there forever, I don't know.
But that's why it's striped, is just
You got
because
a
it was
question
a
over here,
requirement.
Jeremy? You had a question here.
Since many cities have a policy for putting bike lanes in when you do striping of roads, does Oregon City have a policy on the books for that, or is that something we should look into? I just wanted to look at striping these roads and like the green line from Malala Avenue, multi-striping. There's a lot of bike lane gaps along that stretch, especially along near the shopping centers. And I don't know if bike lanes are being included in the striping or if that's only for car lanes. Just wanted to look into that.
This, what this is matching what's already there.
Okay, so no,
We
nothing
don't,
new.
yeah, this is not putting money into anything but matching what's already there, just to replace the worn out stripes that are already there.
Okay. And there's no policy for adding in additional stuff like bike lanes when you do striping.
Well, I would say there is policy, so typically we look at these roadways, when we can restripe a bike lane, we will. We're definitely doing that more with places where we're doing pavement maintenance work, like Partlow Road.
That makes sense, yeah.
But I think generally, you mentioned Malala. For the most part, Malala, where we can fit bike lanes, we have them. Or like, again, in this case, where we're redoing Malala between Beaver Creek and 213, we've got plans for bike lanes there. So there are areas where I think we've got opportunities to improve and that's really, I think, Jason and Dana have been talking a lot more about how to implement simple fix kind of solutions. If it's just a matter of taking a 12 or greater width lane and narrowing that section up, kind of like a little bit of a road diet where we could still feel comfortable about putting a bike lane in, we would.
Okay, that makes sense.
But we would, I would guess I would caveat that with, doesn't make sense to do it when we can only do a short segment and then we're back to problem areas. So we try and look, at those corridors that maybe have the potential to be longer. And I think Partlow's a good example of that.
And I do know that we have restriped after repaving. I know we have changed the striping after that, so that's probably
I
the
think,
best play.
Warner Milne is a good example of that, where, we did a little bit of we used to have a turn lane on Warner Milne, and now we've just got the center stripe and no parking, but there's bike lanes on either side of that. So, we look for those opportunities.
And that comes in more to play when we do like a big chip seal on a road that maybe didn't have the correct bicycle, and I talk with Dana, and we figure out maybe if we can narrow a lane down to get the bicycle lane connectivity, but just the long line striping, we're not gonna spend the money to grind off a line to then put a new line 2 feet over.
Got it.
But if we're doing a seal on that road that eliminates all the lines, then we do definitely take a look and see if we can change something up to create bike lanes or whatever we need to do.
Thank you.
Jason, so do you guys stripe yourself or you contract?
Contract from the county.
Oh, county does it for you.
You'll see on there's the two maps and then there's the spreadsheet kind of. So the ones that say PMUF sometimes, or they might say project, what do they say? PMUF. Some of those are gonna be done by the county and some of those might be done through a contractor, if we have a contractor contracted to stripe with that project.
Oh,
Like if we've got a contractor contracted with our slurry seal, then they'll stripe that, and normally we'll put that in a thermoplastic rather than a paint.
I was just curious, it doesn't seem like a lot of striping, it's probably like, a few day job for a county or somebody.
Yeah, that's what they use it as filler work.
Okay.
They fit us in between other jobs.
Yeah.
I know, I've seen them go by my house at 5:30 in the evening.
That was pretty much all I had on the striping.
Okay. So I already mentioned the Malala Avenue Streetscape Project. The other one's National Night Out. So I did learn that the National Night Out is going to be, I forget the date, August 24th, I believe. And they're going to do it down at the end of the Oregon Trail. They're interested in having city committees represented there. So we're going to want to do that. I thought we're going to put together a little subcommittee meeting on that. Probably need to do that because it'd be nice to figure out what we're wanting to do there before summer in case we don't meet. I'd like to be able to get materials and whatever we're going to do there. And I thought we talked a little bit. I know you guys met as a subcommittee. I'm pretty excited about doing, because of the number of children that are there, it'd be nice to focus on, crosswalk safety or something child related. So, yeah.
Ed, do you still have that stuff from the last one?
I'm sure I do. I think, I'll have to go home and look.
So maybe, can you work with, I can't remember, it was Henry and Ed?
It's Bob, Ed, and Henry.
Yeah, and Ed mostly had the stuff because he was better at it than the other two of us.
Okay. Well, and if there's any other interest, we can get together and do a little powwow on what we can really bring to that. So, that's it.
Okay. Any communications from any outside world that we need to know about?
I'd like to know if we'll be privy to tonight's vote.
I'll email tomorrow. I'll send out an email after I tally everything up.
Thank you.
Anything else?
The appointment's still subject to the mayor.
That's right.
Yeah.
I know all about that.
Any future agenda items that anybody wants to bring up?
I have one. The Clackamas County has approached me about presenting it regarding the transportation safety plan they're creating for Vision Zero. And so they want to be on a future agenda to discuss their plan. So,
Can you give the information to
follow
Kim?
up. Yeah.
Is that Joe Merrick or is that somebody else?
It is, I'll look at my email. But yeah, it's going before the county board next week. So if you are want to do any public comments, it's going before the county board next, I think, a week from Thursday. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anybody? Anywhere? I